This is all basically. You could, so yeah, I'm just going to so if I'm right, you actually, can you just tap that?
Yeah.
Screen activated, so if you do this, you can move it around. You can now move.
Okay, if I unplug the power.
Yeah.
How much power has it got?
It's got battery.
Okay. So we'll mic up people as we go. Okay. Okay. So elaborate. Okay. Excellent. And I'm gonna plug this in. I hope this works.
Can you clap like this?
Yeah, I will clap in just 2 seconds when I'm about to start. Let me just double check. Wonderful. We've got the Hangout running. Excellent. You've got video. We've got everything running. Wonderful. Well done, everyone. It's like we're doing our most sophisticated audio-visual ever so far, which is great. So in addition, speakers, when you come over here, you can kind of get mic'd up and it's slightly more. Great, and the sound, the background sound has gone away. Okay, so is that phenomenally loud? Okay, apologies. So, I also might just move this. This is going to be for audience questions later. Welcome, everybody. It's very, very warm. I don't think we planned this event in July. We thought it would be warmer than the day we'd organised it in July. It's kind of London, the heat is both wonderful and slightly oppressive. So I'm just going to begin by doing a very short introduction before we get into the great set of speakers we have tonight about drones and open data. I'm just going to give a very brief introduction to Open Knowledge and Open Knowledge London. So these set of events are organised by a group of us, and we're always looking for new people to come and help organise these events. So if you're interested in running helping run Open Knowledge London meetups or getting involved in Open Knowledge generally, please chat to Yaber, myself, or Joe later. But at the moment, Yaber, Nick Halliday, Joseph here, and myself organising these. And I want to say a little bit, so Open Knowledge London is the London outpost of Open Knowledge England. And for those you don't know, Open Knowledge is a non-profit. It was founded in 2004. I was the founder. And it particularly has a model of of a network model where there are chapters and local groups all around the world. And there's also a kind of core NGO called Open Knowledge International that does work. But there are all groups in each country. And each group is kind of autonomous, but part of the family. You can kind of think of it as children who go off and do their own thing, but also part of the overall family of open knowledge, and committed to these basic principles of promoting open information in the world. And that's what Open Knowledge England is, and anyone, if you're interested in getting involved in Open Knowledge England, it's open to anyone to come participate. Please get in touch. So I just want to say what the vision of Open Knowledge generally and Open Knowledge England is that we have this thing that all public information is open, and that creators and innovators are recognized and supported. That's the vision that we have. And we think it's basically one of the biggest visions of the 21st century. I mean, we think the question of how you run the information age in this way, other than maybe climate change, other than existential threats to human existence, is the biggest policy question of the 21st century. And I just want to emphasize, when I say all public information is open, I want you to get how radical that statement is, because I don't mean by public information government information. I mean all information that is not private. Maybe we could say all published information. All information that is not personal, private. Anything that you could legitimately and legally sell or give to anybody else. So all movies, all music, all research, modulo personal information, all software. Our vision is that all of that is open. Right? All of it. Right? Not just government information, not just stuff people. That's the vision. Now we're not big on commodity, and that creators and innovators are recognized and supported. So I just want to take a moment. So why is that the biggest question of the 21st century? The policy question. Well, assuming things go according to plan, things don't go terribly wrong, and things keep advancing, more and more of our economy and society will revolve around information. More and more of what we produce will be software or computer games or movies or medicines. At the heart of medicine is basically information. It's the recipe for a drug or a recipe for a treatment. More and more of our economy will be information oriented. And the question then is, the question of open versus closed is the question of who owns and controls and profits from information. And how does that happen? And the point is that information is different from the goods that we have been used to. We're useful to physical things, to cars, to donuts, to shoes. We're used to physical things, and physical things have this fundamental property that they can only be used by one person at a time. You can't drive your car to two different places simultaneously. Two people cannot wear the same pair of shoes at the same time, or at least it's very uncomfortable. Right? But information is not like that. And we as a society are only really waking up and thinking through the implications of that very gradually. What we've actually been doing for a couple of centuries, for a variety of reasons, is actually trying to apply the old rules to this new world. Take the rules that we had, which is private property, the social rules that go with exclusive use, which is exclusive control, and apply it to the information world. And that does not work. And so, the thing is, in this room, mostly, and I will say this still, the people who get involved in this topic are technologically oriented. But this issue is about the most fundamental questions of inequality and power in the 21st century. This is something, if you're a trade unionist, if you're an environmental campaigner, if you're interested in any question of social justice or of societal growth or of dynamics, welcome. You are interested in this question, and at the moment, that is not what goes on. At the moment, this is not at the forefront of questions. Even, I'll just take one example. Who has recently seen newspaper articles about the future of work and robots taking over everyone's job? Has anyone seen articles about that, right? And people are getting, more ordinary people. It's written about in The Economist. And the question of open and closed is actually the fundamental policy question in that area as well. Because, let me explain something then, which is the special nature of information. The fact that you can make costless copies at the click of a button, which you cannot do with cars or houses or donuts. You cannot hit a button and have a Ferrari for everyone, but you can hit a button and have a copy of Gangnam Style for everybody, or Angry Birds, or War and Peace. The point, though, is that cuts both ways. If you have this magical copy machine and it's controlled, in the closed world, it means someone it's proprietary, someone owns and controls that piece of information. It leads to vast wealth if you are successful, if you are the successful person. So it generates immense inequality. In fact, the growth in inequality we've been seeing in the Western world, certainly in the last 20, 30 years, at least in part, probably relates to that, to the growth of digital technology. And open goes the other way. It's the solution to that. It's a world in which that information is open to everybody. And so if you're interested in inequality, if you're interested in the future of work, because what's fundamentally behind the future of work is in a world, right, where there's no work in the future, and everyone's just got enough, there wouldn't be the worries, right? All these anxious articles aren't about the utopian world in which none of us have to work anymore, right? They're all about a world where, yeah, some people have no job and have no money, and they're very poor, they don't have enough. And there's some other group who own all the robots or own all the AI, right? That is the actual, it's not, you have no work and you have no resources anymore, but someone else does. And openness is therefore the solution to a large extent to that question. In a world in which the robot software is open, in which the AI software is open and freely available to everyone, you have a much more equal, egalitarian world. It's not a world of utter inequality. There are people who are better at using that or have steel-making plants that can help build the robots and so on. But it solves much of that concern. The point, you might say, and I just come to this, of course, is there's two questions. Well, fundamentally, there's one question, which is who pays for it? Openness sounds all very well, but doesn't it sound like those kind of communist utopias that didn't work so well, in which everyone would just like farm the land together? There's a difference. So there's two things. So one is that unlike that world, we do have costless copying. We can have bread for everyone once we've created the thing in the first place. That isn't true of your communist utopia about land. It does, there's a limited supply of the land. The other is how do you pay for it? How do you pay for the first copy? That's the fundamental question you would ask, which is why do we have patents and copyright and all these monopoly rights today? Is how do we pay for the first copy? It's all very well to dream of like openness, but someone has to pay for that. And so I just want to talk very quickly about this and explain. I want to start actually with this, which is a model now familiar, I hope, to many of us, the platform world that we see all around us, these platform economy. This is Spotify, right? Spotify has subscribers. They pay into a funding pool, some amount of money. We don't quite, it's not totally always disclosed by Spotify. And then that money goes ultimately to artists or to profits for Spotify, and obviously to costs. I haven't started on the costs of running a platform. And what I want to describe as remuneration rights. Artists here essentially license their copyright unlimitedly. They do a deal with Spotify, and what they agree to do is get paid per use, basically, per play. Very crudely. The exact deals vary maybe per artist. But you could think of it, what I want to emphasize here, it's like a remuneration right. A monopoly right says, you've always got to seek permission from me when you use my material. The remuneration right model says, I've kind of licensed you for unlimited use for all the subscribers to Spotify, and you've got to pay me on a basis of use, right? You kind of get rid of the monopoly aspect. When you're on Spotify, you can listen to the tracks if you subscribe as much as you want. Right? There's no limit to that, and it's it's to every track that Spotify have subscribed to. It's not like buying an album that you could listen to as many times as you want. You've got all of Spotify's catalog. It's kind of a cooperative model. Now I'm going to come back to what's wrong with it, but what I want to explain is the Spotify model is kind of like the open model. In the open model, we who ultimately use information goods, I mean, you could also put businesses on the left who buy software and other things as well. They put money into a funding pool, like Spotify. And that money gets given out to innovators and creators, kind of like Spotify. I mean, the differences are remuneration rights are similar. So like, imagine you were doing open Spotify. We replaced Spotify with the open music model. What would happen is the government would come along and say, guys, we're going to run this funding pool, right? Every person in the UK is going to pay £1 a month into this funding pool. We'll look after it. The government, maybe an independent body will look after that money, and it will get given out to artists maybe monthly, on the basis of how much their music is listened to in the United Kingdom or used. We'll track that. Maybe with a statistical sample, we'll track how much it does, just like Spotify tracks what you listen to so it can pay artists. Maybe not as invasively as Spotify does, which is like track everyone on Spotify all the time, but track maybe a small proportion of people voluntarily. Pay that money to innovative creators. In addition, you might have some upfront funding. You might say, we're going to fund some symphonies or some people to create other pieces of musical work that might not get funded in this remuneration rights model. And finally, you might have other options like I call the X factor model. You might allow some people to vote, like this £1 a month, maybe 20p of their £1 a month. They can kind of vote to artists they like, irrespective of how much they listen. They can say, I really love, you know, Joe's band. I want to fund Joe's band, right? Which is kind of X factor like, you vote, right? And this is very similar. Remember here, I'm also not arguing the government gets involved in actually running the music distribution platform. All it deals with is licensing and setting up a pool of money that gets paid to people. It doesn't actually have to run a music distribution platform. Right? This is the open model. Spotify, in a way, are already doing it. It's so inefficient to have monopoly rights for music, to have everyone have to buy individual tracks. It's so ludicrous and so unworkable that already Spotify are kind of doing bulk licensing for you, except they've now become the monopoly, right? Once you're on Spotify, it's all you can eat, but before you get on Spotify, Spotify set the price. Because let me explain to you what's bad about monopoly rights. So let's just take one story. Let's say you're a poor teenager again, if people can remember that. And it's difficult for some of you now to remember a day without current music streaming systems. But back in the day, we had to buy CDs. Now, as a teenager, you weren't going to be able to buy much more than 10 CDs a year. That was just your annual budget, was about £100. Yet you could listen to many more. You could probably listen to hundreds, if not thousands of CDs in a year. If some of you might even remember, Apple used to sell devices called iPods. iPod's capacity ran to like 20,000 songs. Do you know any teenagers who had the actual resources to buy 20,000 songs? Which, you know, even at £1 a play is £20,000. I do not know many teenagers. Yet Apple sold a lot of those devices to people. Right? It's because it's so inefficient, because when you don't allow someone to get that piece of music that they couldn't pay for, if you allow them access, they were never going to be able to pay the artist, but they would have got the enjoyment of it. It's classic monopoly, right? You've denied someone access, even though they wouldn't have been able to pay you. They are fundamentally a problem, which is why people have got around them for years. Why Apple have sold devices that clearly allow people to involve themselves in massive music piracy, right? So to go back, we already have existence proofs of this model. And imagine, I want to imagine, you did this for all software. Software all of it was open license, but there was a massive funding pool. The government kind of organized, people had to contribute to, and the money was then given out to people whose apps were downloaded, whose software was used. Some people, by the way, would still pay for software to be created because there were not enough users for it, right? If you got a piece of software just for your website, right, you're never going to bother trying to go to this funding pool. If I built you one website, there's going to be one user of it. You're not going to get anything out of the funding pool. So you're just going to have to pay me to build your website in the way we do today. You know, you go and commission people to build one-off pieces of software for you. And I just want to say, so this is music, and I just want to check if you can do the numbers, just to get you an idea of how much better this system is. Spotify charge £10 a month, roughly. You can pay all artists who are currently receiving money from music sales in the UK as much money, if not more than they were receiving, for 90p a month. Under a tenth of the cost of Spotify, right? These are the actual numbers, right? And most of that money would go into remuneration rights. It would be a funding pool of about this size, and you would pay it to artists and their backers. And they can have remuneration rights, just like copyright. You'd get a right, you'd say, I created this song, I'm entitled to be paid. You could trade it, you could do all those things. And just if you're worried, why isn't Spotify good enough? I'm not going to go into that today, but you can ask me why Spotify. So I just want to give you one last example. Music's are small potatoes, but we now the US spends 15% of its budget on healthcare. 15% of GDP in the United States goes to healthcare, and a large portion of that is now going on drugs. So you can apply exactly the same model to drugs. Open up all drugs, remove patents, have a big funding pool that gets paid into by citizens and consumers through taxes, and distribute that to biotech startups and other people who invent drugs, research and other people on the basis of remuneration rights, research funding via expert selection, etc. This is the future. This is the possibility. And it's a world of, first of all, massive egalitarianism. The world of digital capitalism is the world of the casino. basically. Most people go in the door, they put down their money, and a tiny few leave unimaginably wealthy, having hit the jackpot, and the rest are basically leave empty-handed. It is also a world of a lot of dynamism. It's a world of professionalism and so on. And it's also a world of freedom and also more innovation and growth. It's also better for innovation and growth. So I want to finish by saying that's why we exist. We exist to create an open information age in the 21st century, which I think is the single biggest policy question determining that faces us as a society. And how do we do that? We want to change government and policy. Government ultimately is the one group out there who has the ability to raise funds from people and solve free rider problems, if you've noticed. They are allowed to compel everyone to contribute to something via taxation. That's how we pay for public goods like national defense or building roads. It's via government. And then we get together cooperatively to fund software, information. So that is for it for today. And if you're interested in getting involved in Open Knowledge and Open Knowledge England, please come and chat to us later. And I want to end by saying the technology like drones, which we're going to look at this evening when we look at the data collection possibilities. Only in drones themselves, I'm not sure that's what we'll talk about tonight, but when you think about it, the software, the technology that goes into drones, again, so much of it is software, so much of it is hardware, so much of it is something that could be open itself, and which often isn't at the moment. But it's also what we produce with them. We've suddenly got a new tool for producing vast amounts of information. How will it get paid for? How will it get used? Will it be commission one-off? Will we end up with people, building proprietary pools of information, or will we create open pools of information from the massive amounts of data that drones are throwing off? Exactly the same questions of funding, of how it will work, come up in those areas as well. So, without any more ado, I want to invite, do you want to come set up? I'm excited to kind of come to our first talk here today. Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to welcome you. You guys both want to come up? And I am going to hand over the mic here.
Are you going to do it with that one and then we'll swap?
You can swap over. Which one
if you can set it up on that one,
there
that'd be
you go.
beneficial for me.
If you want to walk around like boldly,
I might
TED
do.
style at the front.
We'll see.
Boldly walk where no man has walked before.
Let's see.
Wonderful. Great.
So I'm gonna. Yeah, no. If you can disconnect and set it up on your one. Yes.
Small interlude.
Can we swap these round? So I have that one here.
That's great. Can one of you just clap?
Sure. No, let's do that.
Oh yeah, that was actually on the
Yeah, that's all right. If you could extend the desktop rather than mirror it, make it a little more simpler. Press. Yeah. Okay, that didn't work. Okay.
We'll get there, guys. We'll get there.
If you press function,
That might be because actually the HDMI was a bit off. Just stick that on.
sure.
Try this again.
Section. No.
That's
okay. What we'll do, we'll just load it up on the other one. I'll just talk.
Well, we can just duplicate the screen, right?
Yeah, just duplicate it.
Is this hardware or something?
Not sure.
Who knows? But at the moment, we'll just duplicate screens.
Yeah.
Drive.
It's always that reason we should double check before.
Yes. Yes.
I thought Rachel was that.
Pardon?
We did yours.
No, mine wasn't working, so now we're using his, and we're having difficulties. Sure. Let's see what we can do here.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Drones. So drones, unmanned aerial vehicles, quadcopters, octocopters, hexacopters. It's amazing how in such a short time it's become part of the public discourse where everyone knows what a drone is. I remember when we started a couple of years ago, when we mentioned we did drones, people immediately associated it with the military. Now, your thoughts are somewhere else. You know, you imagine whether it's those drones flying around, you think of perhaps aerial filming, aerial photography, think of things like parcel deliveries, internet meshes, even like quite innovative uses like conservation or firefighting. And when we first started with drones here at SkyEdge, we just wanted to play with robotics. We thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could just build a drone? And so we gave it a go, and we got it flying. And then the next thought was, wouldn't it be cool if we put a camera on it? So we did. And it's because we were curious, just to see what it was like up there. Now, you can go to Maplins, you can get a drone, and now anyone can do it. It's really accessible. But it was quite accessible before I read online. A lot of people were already beginning to share that knowledge. From where we started a couple of years ago, the heart of what we do at SkyEdge is, well, anything to do with drones, but we've worked, like, over the last 2 years, we've worked with some quite interesting clients. We've provided footage for BBC, for the UN, we've created custom drones, we've captured lots of data, and we'll go into that in a little bit. Along the way, we've kind of picked up some interesting stories, interesting experiences, what we've done, and I think one of my favorite places was when we were working at Spaceport America and doing drone shots there. We actually got to spend 2 weeks there. And the best thing about having your own drone is that you can take selfies whenever you go to these amazing places. So I hope you don't mind, but I just want to share it with you because I just think it's a really cool shot. Let's have a look. Let's see if that's going to load up. So yeah, that was a fun 2 weeks. We also get to it was interesting because where we were working would always pass a spaceship, which is pretty awesome. But anyway, sorry, back to the actual presentation. So what we do, there are 2 parts: creation, where we film, photograph. We build custom drones, often for PR events, and we also do 360 filming as well. So things for headsets, Facebook, YouTube, things like that. On the other side, which is really fascinating, is obviously with a drone, just like when we first attached a camera to it, we realized we could attach sensors to it as well. And we're really interested in different ways you could do things, both using data images and all other kinds. Later on, I'm going to get my colleague Sununu to talk a little bit more about that. This is our fleet. These are 3 of our drones. We built that for Cartoon Network. But actually behind there, we have really smart chips in there. What's interesting is they can fly autonomously. We can set it, literally point and click, tell it where to go on a GPS map. They don't always look like that. We often have different payloads on them. And the most interesting thing about what powers them, the flight computer on them, is that it's open source. Both the hardware and the software is open source. And it's running off a basic chip. And you can even get that chip now very cheaply, because there are many Chinese manufacturers, American manufacturers who will actually just print off that chip, sell it to you quite cheaply, and it is immensely powerful. Other crafts we've got in our fleet is DJI Inspire. That's off the shelf. It's a couple of grand, and to be honest, we do about 90% of our work with that. That also is semi-autonomous. You can set waypoints, tell it where to go, or you can fly it manually. You can set it to circle around. You can attach different sensors to it. The camera is stabilized. Flies about 20 minutes. And yeah, anyone can now buy that. It's a lot easier than when we started. This is another drone we built. This one actually doesn't have any brains. This is for a stunt where they wanted to hide the propeller, so it works more like an airplane. And to turn, it has two motors which just bend the knees, two little servos, and then it'll turn and fly. The interesting thing about this is that it's actually built out of carpet insulation foam. We built 3 of them, and they're about this big. So, and finally, another member of our fleet is our rover. Of course, not all drones need to be up in the air. This one's you can program. You can fly it with remote control as well. It's semi-autonomous. This shot itself is when we were in. This is Sierra Leone, so we're filming something in 360 for a charity to help with women's education and educating the girls, giving them an opportunity, and kind of to avoid FGM and things like that. And so actually, if you look at the top, we've got an array of 6 cameras, and that's how you film 360. You kind of stitch it afterwards. That too, the chip running it is running on something called APM. It's open source, both the hardware. It's a really nice bit of software to play with to kind of program the drone to do what you like. See what else. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to kind of finish off before we go on to the data side. One more project which we worked on, which we really, really enjoyed. So we got commissioned by the UN by another film company to document a project which is going on in Africa, where they want to effectively build a wall of trees from East Africa all the way to West Africa to stop the encroachments of the desert. It's causing mass migration. The Sahel's basically coming in. It's destroying crops. It's destroying livestock. So everyone's moving away. So we were in Senegal, and we were just capturing that story. Primarily because also we've got the drones, we can actually see in 360 that wall of trees being started. And it's been about 8 years that project's been going on, and it's going to extend. And the reason they wanted this documentary, or this clip, was because they were going to show it to world leaders at the UN COP summit to try to raise awareness. This was actually ended up being shown to about, I think, 30, 40 world leaders, including Barack Obama and many others. And they did raise, I think, 4 billion for the project. So just wanted to end with that before I invite Sununu to now talk about the data and the and what we can do with photogrammetry. Oh, watch out, because it's attached there.
Hey guys, so I mostly focused on the data capture using drones. So we attach different kinds of sensors on the aircraft, whether that would be thermal cameras, multispectral camera, or just regular RGB photography. And with that, you can use a technique called photogrammetry, which is a way of deriving measurements through photographs. So I've got a few examples of how that kind of works. So the first one is a job we did for an architecture firm in Manchester, which they wanted to map a large area very quickly. So the way we did that is we set the drone flying. Each one of these green points is a single photograph, and the data is derived from the GPS coordinates of the drone at the time. So we don't fly any of this manually, and it's also a little bit limited on the range. So we did 4 flights, each one at slightly different heights and different patterns to make sure we have enough coverage. And the way photogrammetry works is that but you have to have at least 3 images or overlapping images, and the computer scans all the pixels and looks for the images next door to it and sees what points it can derive or what points are similar. And using a minimum of 3, you can derive a point in space. It's helped a lot by a lot of the data sensors that basically put all the metadata in the photos, so you put all the photos in the software. So there's a couple hundred images, and from that you can derive a point cloud. A point cloud is basically a single derived point in space. This particular model has about 100 million, something like that. Oh, I haven't loaded that up yet. But this, after you get the point cloud, you can derive a 3D detection mesh. So it uses the computational model, and it puts the images on top. So you can look at small details like imperfections in the terrain. One of the advantages of using it at the time was in this quarry, specifically there, it was really unstable. So taking ground-based photos and stuff like that was pretty dangerous. As well as RGB kind of data, you can also get height maps, which are really useful in like low-lying areas to see where there's been an erosion. So you can very quickly change altitude in topography. So you can see the low-lying areas near the village, in the town here. And with this, you can also use for flood prevention. So you can basically make flood prevention measures based on this kind of scan. And we didn't use a particularly expensive drone for this. The drone we used for this now is worth about £400. And the software that used is freely available for anyone to use and download on any mobile device. So you can train the drones to fly autonomous. Pretty much open to anyone to use if you know how to operate a drone and do it safely within the legal parameters. Which is also one of the reasons we did so many flights, because even though the drone can fly autonomously way further than you can see it, to keep it within the law, you have to fly it within visual line of sight, which is really important because if there's any low-lying planes, like military jets love to fly much closer to the ground, much faster. So you've got to have at least of a chance to avoid any of that kind of collision. And helicopters as well fly very low, so not all air traffic flies high. And you can also derive other kinds of data from the same. So you can derive like thermal data to see where there's hot patches. And there's many industries like fire prevention or a whole host of different industries that rely on thermal data, whether it be crop management or making buildings more efficient in actually heat loss, amongst many others. This is what you can do in a large scale, but if you take a lot of photos and you combine them with ground photos as well, you can have a much more detailed map of the terrain. So this is a different kind of project we did, and the reason we did this one was primarily for 3D printing, so we had to take a lot of images to get as much data as possible. With this one, it's about 2,000 images, both in the air and on the ground. Some of the ones on the ground we took using a mobile phone, some with a DSLR. And this was to create a very high data sort of 3D model, and it's accurate to about 1.1 centimeter real world, so it's very accurate, all derived from photogrammetry and not LiDAR.
Why did they want the model? What was
primarily, they just want it was a couple, and they wanted a really cool birthday present. Primarily. Even though it can be used for a whole range of stuff, you can also 3D print your property for a spouse. The pixel size, we're using a 12 megapixel camera. You can use down to like 5 megapixel. The less megapixel, the less accurate the image will be. Well, depending on how close you are to it. If you're really far away and you have low pixel count, you'll get a bit more fuzzy, less accurate model. The real-world measurement, the sampling distance, means from the models we can derive measurement. If you compare it to real world, it's got an accuracy of less than a centimeter across the whole site, or any feature. Yeah, it's about 25 meters per pixel. We have about less than a centimeter per pixel. So it's... show measurement. Yeah, which one is the... think it's polyline. Yeah, it's a polyline. Yeah, so you can create topographic models, you can create orthomosaics, you get a huge range of export options once you have the data. How you use it is depending to you. Yeah, if you want to do a measurement, see if with shadows, you want to try and film it with as even light as possible. Shooting images in a raw format makes it easier to take away the shadows in post, so use Photoshop beforehand to remove as many shadows as possible. If you can't do that, then your model becomes somewhat lit. So if I load triangle mesh and get rid of the points, you can kind of see there is sort of shadows from the trees here. Okay. So yeah, this is kind of model data you can get. Yeah, it's quite nice. Yeah. So if you load the point clouds, yeah, it's made of thousands of points, and each one put the cameras back and the rays. Yeah. So one of these points, that's polyline.
So do you take the aerial imagery first and then decide where you need to get on the ground, take some photos, fill in this?
Yeah, I mean, we had to do this in about 2 hours, so we didn't have much time to process it. So you kind of do it like blocks. So you do the aerial looking down first, and then you just try and get as much detail as possible. So if I wanted to get a lot of details, for example, this shed, I took loads of overlapping photos around it. And the way you process it is in layers. So you process the aerial images looking down first, and that gives you like a basic map. And then you can process each one individually and then tie it together using tie points. If I get rid of the cameras and the rays, so each one of those green things, these green markers are individual markers that I've laid down between the data sets, so they all talk to each other when you reassemble them together. So part of it's manual, part of it's automatic. The software is only as good as the information you're putting into it as the data. So you've got to make sure your data is clean and your photographs have overlapping and they're not blurry. But all this data and everything we've done, I've learned on YouTube and on the internet. Like, I have never gone to university learning of this. And the software is getting better, and the information available to everyone is actually much better. And it's all freely available. The people who make the software have webinars that are hours long explaining how to use all these features. And because of YouTube and stuff like that, there's hundreds of videos on how to use drones, photogrammetry. So literally anyone can do this. This one's called Pix4D. You can do it with Ardusoft. There's a few other softwares that you can use. The software is not free. You can process the images for free. You can process an image, but you can't output into like many formats. You can pay a licensing fee for like several £100 a month. If you want to buy the software, it's about $5 grand.
There's also an open source project
yeah.
as well, which I think you're trying to do Linux, but I checked it out last year. It was moving on so quickly. I don't know.
But they do. This software also gives you a 50-day trial, which you can kind of see I'm on. So you can use it for 15 days and output all the data you need from it. It's all completely open. It also shows you how to use the program. But yeah, this is the kind of stuff you can do now that before was impossible if you were government. I think it was probably impossible if you were in a government. But now it's open to just about anyone.
So another question, just before we have time, and we can have questions.
Yeah.
I guess one question is, obviously there's quite a lot of data. This is a point where actually there is some cost of storing the data, but do you think over time we're going to start, just like we've got OpenStreetMap, we'll have this level of detail in this kind of country being checked? Obviously we put a bunch of time to collect that data from some 100 by 100 square meter chunk.
Yeah.
And obviously that's quite a bunch of effort. And then ironically, you're not even selling this data. You did it for these people to produce a 3D printed out. You can imagine a point where people start, and obviously the privacy question, but imagine just mapping England. You can imagine starting to share into databases. Are people doing that already? Like trying to create like, oh, I got a map, this level of detail, like one.
Ben?
So I was just going to say, just this morning, I got invited to talk by someone who has set up something called Open Aerial Map. So, and it's exactly this. It's a place for people to share the maps they've created, whether they're hobbyists or whether. not just to create that central database, but make it useful for relief. So if there's a disaster, you can map an area and share it with other people who are in disaster zones, things like that.
Great. Okay, that's just.
Yeah. Any other questions regarding this?
You should sell us heat as well.
Yeah, this is a thermal map as well we derived from the images.
I'm not sure
This is-
what these buildings are, but I'm probably not allowed to ask that.
Well, this particular building was their neighbor, so they bought this house, and the neighbor was a little bit difficult, so they bought this house as well. So this is their spare house. Apparently, it's big enough for their daughters to learn how to bike ride in the winter without going outside. So yeah. And the reason they wanted a map is because there is no real architectural plans. And this is an old farmhouse on top of a mountain that's been around. The land's been used for like 500 years. And they've kind of built bits on top of bits. So there's no real cohesive architectural model. And what we could do is very quickly map the whole property in a few hours and have a very high resolution model of something that nobody else has.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
guys.
sure.
Wonderful. So we're on to our second presentation, which I'm going to say we've got is Mr. Alexander Bow. It's going to come on up to talk about NitroFlex, which I'm stepping right here. So I already have.
Wait, I'm connected.
Yep.
No.
I'm connected. Yes. Okay, London. This is it. Okay. Let me just put this in here. Let me know if you want. Yeah. If necessary, I'll come up. Basically, I can switch you. Is this your guys? Perfect. Great. Okay. Here we go. Let's mic you. You can shut that up even. Hold on. Just need to. Up. Oh, here's the model.
You guys going to see a copy of the 3D model?
Put it down in your pocket.
Okay.
And
Feel free.
and then you can just strap some wire in your pocket. You can move around as well.
Okay, let go.
It's inkjet process. They
Okay.
power inkjet glue.
That's really interesting.
Let me plug this in. Where's the guys? Where's the socket? Here you are. Thank you very much. Tiny basics. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, let me. There we go. Over to
There we go. Well, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Good. My name's Alexander Berwitz. I was captain in the Air Force, in the Spanish Air Force. I was flying for 15 years.
Is it moving without you choosing?
I'm not doing anything.
Okay, so I know what I'm doing. View slideshow. Actually, do I want that one or do I just want? Great, I think it's fine. Like that.
Okay.
Okay.
As I said, I've been flying for the last 15 years, firefighters in the Air Force in Spain. I don't even know the Canadair. It's a Canadian-built airplane that scoops 6 tons of water from water surfaces and then drops them over the fire. And over these 15 years, well, we've been thinking a lot about the people we've lost on the way. In our unit, we haven't lost many people, but the smaller planes and helicopters, every year, there are at least 2 or 3 accidents all over Europe, sometimes even 5 or 6. So we're losing people the whole time, and we've come up with this idea, not only to avoid that loss of life, but also to fight fires at night. We'll talk about it now, how it can't be done at the moment with current manned vehicles, and we want to take this to the unmanned vehicle arena. So NitroFlex is the idea we put together. It's a group of 2 engineers and 2 pilots. We've been working on this now. We've been working for 8 years on it, and we're finally coming to the right point where we're going to be building our first demonstrator, a scaled demonstrator of the machine in these next 2 years. Let's talk to you a bit about how the whole thing is. Basically, we're going to see 4 parts. I won't make it too boring. I won't talk too long about every single part, but feel free to interrupt if there's any question. But I'll try and make it in these 20 minutes that we have for us. We're going to see the concept, what the AGC is, the Autonomous Glider Container Definition, operation phases of the AGC, and the possible uses of the concept. This will be just a quick overview. And, well, as I said, it's a totally new approach. I mean, everybody knows drones as possibly to be used for imagery. Basically, in the military at the beginning, they were used widely as relays for information and to get image of the battlefield in a quick way. And then it's become very extended, as we know, in a commercial way at the moment. And as you can see, Ben and his company have been doing a great job with their drones, and it's really amazing stuff they're doing there. Really, really wonderful stuff. But what we want to do with this one is basically be able to spread any kind of payload in difficult or impossible to access environments with a manned plane. For that, we need 2 elements. It's going to be totally different. We're not taking off on our own. We have to take off with a launcher aircraft. There can be any transport aircraft with a rear ramp, which will be loaded with these autonomous containers. We'll see a short video after I've looked through this. And that's basically what we're doing is 2 phases. We're using the technology that was actually used in the 90s for the First World War, in the first wars in the Middle East, where they could actually do this very precise pinpoint dropping of payloads through a window. You could go through a window with the machines. But what we want to do instead of destroy it is actually drop a payload of water or extinguishing agent, and then actually return to base so it can be reused, the machine. Okay, so they are not a bomb that just falls and gets destroyed, but it's a vehicle that carries the payload, drops it, and then becomes an unmanned air vehicle and returns to base. So we are taking 2 technologies that are very well in use and are very mature, and putting into one single machine. We'll see as recovery has been done at night, also safety and privacy. We'll see all about that a bit later. Basically, you can see it's our main target is forest firefighting, but of course it can be used for other fires, nuclear, chemical, and bacteriological emergencies. You remember what happened in Fukushima and Chernobyl? All the people who are dropping the water on the helicopters into the reactor have exposed themselves to high levels of radiation and will definitely suffer from that in the years to come, which is pretty terrible. Meteorological phenomena from creation of rain with directly injecting the sulfur iodide and many other things. Another interesting use is drug plantation spraying. As you know, in Colombia and also in Afghanistan, most of these terrorists are from the drug selling, and what they do is they send in manned planes in daylight escorted by 2 armed helicopters like Apaches, and they have to go in there with their little airplane, and they're very exposed, and with this they could do it at night and they wouldn't even see it coming, so it would be also good. Pest spraying and seeding in remote and accessible areas. There's lots of pests, for example, in Canada, huge amounts of vast forests that can't be actually crop sprayed by these animals, or seeded. It could even seed areas that have been burnt so that they could recover over the time. They could do that easily with this machine. I'd like to just quickly, before we start going into what the forest fire are, and as I wanted to put this video on, maybe you can help me here quickly. That'd be great. It's a short video, a couple of minutes, but will probably give you an idea of how the concept works and about the big drama of fire that we have worldwide that many of us maybe not aware of. But as we say, yeah, a bit of sound would be good, especially later.
Hello, my name is Alexander
Oh, here I am.
captain of the Bombardier 415 with over 12 years of experience in
That was
aerial
then.
fire. My first mission, I've always understood that the main lack of aerial firefighting means has been the inability to perform nighttime operations.
That's what I said before, it's nighttime.
That's why I became head of operations for Nitrofirex, because I firmly believe that it offers the best solution from an economical, technical, and operative point of view. Nitrofirex answers this need by offering unmanned air vehicles capable of dropping great amounts of extinguishing agent over the fire when it's at its weakest, and without putting at risk neither the crews nor their expensive aircraft. In the following video, you will get a look at our innovative concept.
So now we get a look that any transport aircraft can use them. It doesn't have to be specially modified for it. You just can launch them through the rear ramp. And we have these glider containers. They come with folded wings, and the surfaces get extended when dropped. And we drop them in swarms of 4 or 6 to maximize the efficiency of the drop. They can attack various fires. They can be programmed. They're autonomous, so they can be programmed to attack different fires from the same drop. And the main thing is the return to base then, yeah? We can see they will return to be reused, so it's a constant loop. We've seen how it works the whole time. It's also an operational changer for the whole thing.
Unmanned vehicle Curiosity has been on Mars.
Yeah, well, this is a bit...
Here on Earth, our forests still burn away at night, only because we haven't been able to integrate already existing technologies.
Yeah, existing and ancient
In the
technologies.
2 minutes this video lasts, 1,400 hectares have burned somewhere on Earth.
Well, you can see it was a bit of a commercial video because we did this for a drone contest. We were trying to get some funding, and it worked pretty well, so we were happy about that. But I just wanted you to see basically the part where we actually deploy the vehicles from the back of the ramp and how they do that in formation and everything, okay? So let's get into this quickly. Current technological status. I mean, this is a bit weird. It's just to get you into the idea of how current firefighters are seen. They're slow, okay? You think an airplane. Airplanes are fast, yeah? They're fast. We all think they're fast. The airplane I'm flying, was flying now, but I just 3 months ago left the Air Force. I'm flying now airliners. But the one I was flying before, we were flying at 160 knots cruise speed, which is what, kilometers per hour. It's about 350 kilometers per hour maximum, which is very slow. What does that mean operationally? It means that you have to have, in order to be able to attack a fire, you have to get at the beginning, just when it's being generated. So just in Spain, in the surface of Spain, we had 12 aircraft which were deployed to 8 different air bases. Okay, in winter we all together in one air base for maintenance, but in summer we had to deploy them to 8 air bases to be within 1 hour reach of any part of Spain to attack that fire quickly. That's a big cost, as you can imagine, in maintenance and logistically and obviously the crews and everything. Manual water drops. Okay, I learned my water drops. How do I do them? I know how to do them by rule of thumb. You get there and you learn how to do it. The wind is always different. The terrain is different, and there are many factors that influence in the drop. So some drops can be very good, and some drops can be very bad. It will highly depend on the proficiency of the pilot, and that proficiency sadly gets lost. I've been 15 years there, and I thankfully was adding on experience and could do the drops fairly well at the end. And I was trying to transmit that knowledge to the rest of the pilots, but in the end, maybe some of us go because we get a better job, or we stop flying in the Air Force, or we want to go on flying, which is my case in civilian airlines. So you lose that proficiency. Daytime operation, we are limited. 24-hour operation is a must. I mean, we have all the technology for ages now, and we know that this nighttime operation is really important, especially to give our ground crews that very needed air support. Yeah. Single-role aircrafts. These aircraft that I was flying, each one costs 40 million euros and has a single roll, so that makes it very expensive. If you use aircraft that, like the transport aircraft we had before, you're going to be using them anyway for all the other military operations. If it's not military, it's going to be relief operations or basic transport operations or whatever. I don't have a single. The more roles an aircraft has, the cheaper it becomes to use. And well, obviously the risky operations, we don't want risky operations. We have this technological paradox that we were talking about. We have this early detection with satellites. They can detect a fire very quickly. Your thermal things you said, Ben, in your drones, we're using that. I was flying once fighting fires in Israel, and we had air support from the Heron drone. I think it's called the Heron. It was flying over us, so it was giving us very precise data and everything, which is amazing and great. But of course, we have that technology paradox. We have that detection time is minimal, but then the reaction time is huge. That's what we want to minimize with this aircraft, because we can really reduce that to one base for the whole Mediterranean, from the Canary Islands to Israel, north of Africa, south of Mediterranean, with one single base instead of 8 bases in each country, which is the whole difference. We're to get an idea of the different capabilities of what of the current firefighters. You see that the lowest one is the Dromadair, and Nitrofire would be half of the heavy bomber, which is the one I was flying, which is the Canadair 215, 415. It's 5,500 liters, up to 5,700 on the 415, and ours would carry between 2,500 and 3,000, depending on the weight of fuel we'd use, depending on the distance to the operating base. Okay, I'm just going to go through this quickly. There are many different launch aircraft, so that doesn't pose a problem. If we look at the Airbus 400, we are the one we use here in Europe probably. you can carry 12 of them. Now 12 full Nitro-Firex AGCs would be the equivalent of half of the full bomber capability of the Spanish Air Force in one aircraft only. Okay, so if you have 2 aircraft, you have double the capability too, which is quite amazing. Here we have operation considerations. I could go into this. Basically, the black line is my current aircraft, and this is depending on what transport aircraft we use. The bigger it is, obviously the cheaper it becomes, and the more water you can drop per operation. I won't go into details here. If anyone wants me to explain to him any details of that, I'm welcome to explain to him publicly or personally.
Can you explain how you load them?
Yes, the loading is very simple. We can see that the way we envision this is to have one single base, as I said, will be in the center of the Mediterranean. It would be like, for example, in Marseille or in Italy, in Corsica. That would be the center. Why would we want that center? Because we could fit the aircraft there with 2 sets. For example, if it's the A400, the A400, we'd carry 24 empty ones, and they'd be in a rack, ready to take off. So the fire, let's say, is set up somewhere in the south of Portugal. We'd fly to an airport close by with a double rack. We'd unload the rack and fill them with water, waiting for nighttime, because we couldn't operate in daytime at the moment due to regulations. Regulations will only permit us to work at night, which is okay, which is what we actually want to do, because nobody operates at night. We let the daytime operation happen, because fires normally set up between midday and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so we have tons of time to get the plane there and prepare the operation. So you have those aircraft ready, filled with water or extinguishing agent, depending on whatever you wanted, and loaded in the plane. So the plane would take off just before sundown and be operating at high altitude, waiting for the rest of manned and aircraft and airplanes and helicopters to leave the area and start the operation.
Why do people not operate at night? Because it's dangerous to fly.
You can't operate at night. You know, you've probably seen how people have night vision goggles and all those things, but you can't go into an area with fire. They've been doing operations with, in the 70s, they started trying to do that. They had many accidents. And now they're trying to do that with helicopters, manned helicopters in the States. And they've managed to do that to a certain extent of success. But the danger is not 50% more, it's 300% more. And they only operate in areas where they have actually operated before. And they're very limited in their hours of operation because it's very exhausting, and it's also the cameras they use, the night vision goggles they use. They have also limited angle of vision, so it poses many threats for the crew themselves. Okay, so that's why we're offering this idea. Operation advances, tons of them. 24 operation reduced reaction times, high water drop. The sequential deployment we said was to increment the effectiveness of the drop. When we drop water, if one airplane goes alone, it's effective. But maybe the fire is advancing. You make fire is like a big U-shaped monster that's advancing along a ridge. So if you drop and you make a gap in it, if you go away and you come back, it will probably close again the gap. So you need more airplanes to increase the size of the gap. So you also stop the advance of the fire, especially it's getting together again.
How do you plan the mission?
The mission is planned by missions, firefighting missions. Me as a firefighter, when I take off, I get the order from the government to go to a certain fire. But when I reach that fire, every fire has designated what you call a, I don't know what you call it in English, director de extinción. He's the fire extinguishing manager, the extinguishing manager, yeah, the fire manager. He's managing the fire there, and he's who decides what vehicles operate where, what ground assets are deployed where, and if he has to evacuate or if they need extra things. So he'll be able to do that through his 3 minutes.
Yeah, just 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll make it very quick. So basically, what we said is our aircraft are obviously affected by wind turbulence. If you have clouds, I was operating in Canary Islands once, and we couldn't go to the fire because we had clouds. It's ridiculous, but that's what happens, you know. And this would not be affected by that, and obviously geographical barriers. You can, as I said, attack more than one fire at once, and no risk for crews. And obviously the direct support for the ground crews at night. Those guys are the real heroes. Without aerial support, they can't normally fight the fire because we douse the temperature down and they can get to it. But if they don't kill off what we've started, it works. So it's really a teamwork between ground crews and night operations. Economic considerations, same thing. Much cheaper. Cheaper we are, the bigger the aircraft we're using. Okay, the C-17 carries a whole fleet of 24 of these machines, and it's just quite amazing. Okay, we can see that. But let's see the economic advantages. As we said, more water per flight hour, cheaper. Yeah, obviously, lower cost per drop liter. Many kinds of transport aircraft. You're not limited by one specific aircraft you have to buy and the maintenance on that and everything. Minimum fleet deployment. As I said, we have one base for the whole of Europe or any other countries we're considering. The non-exclusive launcher aircraft, big savings on what we said that it all has to do with the launcher aircraft, that they need no modification. And most important, technologies are already developed and available off the shelf. Okay, many of them are going to be open source that we're going to be using here. We're working with many universities in both in Spain, France, and Germany. And now, well, the latest thing we did was our first funding, our first spark to be able to build our demonstrator was with European Space Agency. We had this whole huge board talk where 20 people listening to us, giving our explanations and asking us questions. So our presentation was 20 minutes, but it took another hour and a half of questions and feedback. But we won that. We were against many other companies. Our little demonstrator. So I won't go into this part. Just for you to get an idea quickly, how much is spent over the last 20 years just in Spain. Okay. About 6 billion euros. I don't know, is that correct in English? 6 billion? Yeah? Okay, because in Spain it's different. That's about 300 million a year, but the last years have been nearly just under 500 million, 450. Yeah, it's really big amounts of money. And that's only direct attack. That means once the fire has been created and you're attacking the fire to put it off, not in what you do during winter to keep the fire from happening, which is actually where the main job has to be done. We're talking about over 160 planes, sometimes over 200 planes. Yeah. So just for you to get an idea, if you look at all the fire that's burnt, Spain is only 1% of the total, and we go into the total economic loss of only these countries: Canada, United States, Russia Federation, Europe, Australia, 8 billion, to about 4,000 aircraft. That's extrapolating, and I'm extrapolated the real numbers crossed through, and I've just cut that extrapolation into half for you to get an idea of how much is spent ridiculously on this thing when we really need to get rid of this fire. Okay, safety, regulation, and analysis. All our doors are open. We're in two groups that are working in Eurocontrol and Eurocay here in doing all the regulations for drones, and we've been able to help out and get a few things here. Tell me.
Given that there are so much obvious advantages, are you looking to do this during the day as well? Different regulation?
Yeah, well, obviously the regulation will eventually allow us to do that, but you must think about the economical setback for all the people who are actually fighting fires with their companies that won't. That's what we were talking about, the robots before taking over. So first we want to take up a niche that we're not bothering anybody. We're just helping things happen. But you're actually going to put the fire off at night. At night, wind goes down, temperature goes down, and humidity goes up. So you're actually hitting it when it's at its weakest. I mean, sometimes when we first beginning to hit it, it's late at night and the sun is just going down and you do one more drop, because you can see that the last drops you're doing have been so effective, and all the drops you've been doing at midday have been doing particularly nearly nothing. It's just quite amazing. Just quickly, we'll forget this part here, but we are going to be in the specific operation category. There's an open category, which is yours. It's below 150 kilos, I think it is, yeah? Then the specific operation category will be a category that has no weight limitations, but only is for a specific operation, which will be ours, will be firefighting, where you can actually control exactly where it's going to be fighting, where it's going to be, because the setback for flying back to the base is going to be over non-populated areas within altitudes that don't bother commercial aviation, especially at night. Okay, but we're going to be the opening wedge for certified category, and that's it. Basically, we talked about this. I could tell you so much, but it doesn't matter. Why at night? Yeah, it's no problem. Basically, what really is our big operational advantage is that we do not affect safety, and we do not affect privacy. What do not affect safety is basically if there's always a man in the loop, as we saw before, and if we drop the cargo, the plane can return on its own. It can be dropped during any moment. But even if it had a complete engine failure or control failure, whatever, it would drop, open a parachute and extend an airbag and have blaring sounds and lights to see where it's coming down, and wouldn't be programmed to fly over those populated areas. So it minimize the effects of possible adverse things. And obviously, you're saving lives by not putting lives at risk with it too. Anyway, what we need as a conclusion, a change of philosophy. We've been fighting fires like this for the last 60 years, since Second World War. It's the same. My airplane, nice, cool. You have all these cool crystal displays with all the stuff. Really nice, cool engines, powerful engine, 5,000 horsepower. But it's the same thing. You're grabbing water and you're taking it and holding it and you're dropping it there manually in the end and slowly. So we want to change the whole thing. So we have to see the seriousness of the problem. We didn't get into this, how serious fires are worldwide. We're producing just in wildfires between 17 and 20% of the carbon dioxide that's generated worldwide. And we're spending maybe 2 billion euros just in reducing 1% of the carbon dioxide that's emitted by airplanes. That's all things that are being done, and they're not even spending 20 million on a project like this. It takes 20 million to make one of these things. So we're happy to start with it. The strategy we talked about, I'm not going to repeat it, and we must just face the challenges, which are regulatory, or I don't know how to say it in English, but regulatory, which we have already surmounted. So we're very happy because that's one of our strengths. Yeah, the economical, we on it. We're already getting our first funds. Technological and operational, they're done. We've been working on it for years, and we know exactly what we want to do once it's created. That will be basically it. Any questions now on the spot?
One thing I'm going to do, I'm going to save these up and do them all at the end.
Okay.
I've got loads of questions, but I'm going to be tough with myself, so that we get a chance.
Okay.
So brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant.
Thanks. Okay. Yeah, I just grab this here.
Yeah, perfect, and hand over to you guys, which you can do it together. You can just.
Okay. We probably will end up doing it together.
You can let me change this. It's just we're running. Okay, it's just because we're running the video off this one. It's okay, it's fine. Let's go for it. If you change something, let's do it. It's fine. Here you go.
Sure.
Yeah, I can put this here.
Okay.
You can be watched. Here. Put this in. Yeah. Perfect. There we go. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much. You still got video up here? Yeah. Brilliant. Right. Where do you want that from?
Is this the PDF?
There you go.
Oh.
Brilliant. Welcome.
Cool. Okay, so hey everyone, thanks for having us. First of all, we're really honoured to be here with such great minds. So we're Flock, we're a small AI startup. We're based in Clerkenwell. I'm Ed, this is Anton, we're the founding team. We haven't made videos for Obama or proposed like dramatic socioeconomic revolutions with data, but we do have what we think is quite a cool idea for how a drone ecosystem could look going forwards. So we thought we'd basically have an open data spin on our standard presentation. We also don't really have a glitzy slide deck, just a few screenshots of what it is we're building. So we're going to put an open data spin on basically how we started as a company, and where we're headed and what we're building and why, obviously. So what we're building is a big data-driven risk analysis tool for drones. We got into this in quite an interesting way, so I'll give my background first. I came from an engineering background. Ended up studying a course called Technology Policy at Cambridge, which is basically a combination of regulatory structures and regulations for technology, businesses and how technology moves through businesses, and emerging tech and technology roadmaps. That kind of sweet spot in the middle, which is obviously all particularly relevant in the drone space, where you've got a combination of all those three things happening at an insane pace. I obviously don't need to tell you guys about how exciting it is to be in the drone space at the moment when we're hitting all these hype curves and everything seems to be blowing up exponentially. But there is a problem in the drone space, which is obvious for anyone, and it's really cool that we've got operators here. We definitely want to chat with you afterwards. And the problem that's in the drone space, which is obvious to all stakeholders, is the problem of risk and what can go wrong and what sometimes does go wrong when you're operating drones, especially if you're operating in congested areas. And this is something that I was looking at quite closely during my research. So what do we mean when we say risk? We're talking about risks like, at the very most basic level, drones falling out of the sky, which is rare but can and does occasionally happen. And when that happens, drones can land on people. They can land in busy roads and disrupt traffic. They can get blown off course by unpredictable weather patterns and end up smashing into the sides of buildings and knocking large panes of glass out of buildings which land on street level below. None of this is nice, but it does happen, and it's something that the industry has to deal with. And Anton's going to give a bit of background later on how the industry has basically called for this a technology that can help to solve these problems. There are lots of technologies arising all over the world, and from very innovative players, from small startups to monster companies like Amazon, Google, and DHL, who are doing incredible research in this area. So right from hardware like parachutes that just you can stick on the top of your drone, and they'll open if your drone falls out of the sky or goes into free fall, all the way to the most advanced sense and avoid technologies, computer vision, etc. We've got a slightly different approach. We've got a data-first, big data approach to risk management in the drone world. I'll hand it over to Anton, who's going to give a bit of background on how the company started and our open data approach to this. Hold on, I'll transfer the mic.
So that's what we're exactly trying to fix when we started Flock. That problem of helping drones understand what the risks were, right? The drone flies and they can be completely autonomous, but they don't necessarily know what's around them unless they see that thing, right? They've got loads of sensors that until they're next to a person, they can't react to it. We're like, how can we help a drone understand that there might be something there even before they start flying, right? Can we plan according to the risks that are around that one flight or plan? Obviously, the answer was data, right? So how much data can we gather even before the flight is planned? So we let them know how they could go around it or how they could minimize it. So we started by looking at TfL's open data platform, right? So that platform would allow us to understand where people were checking in and checking out in Oysters, or where people were getting into buses, almost real time. And we say, wow, suddenly we can see how a city is breathing. Suddenly we can see how people is moving in the city. And obviously looking at applications where Amazon would be flying in cities, or regulation would allow urban or congested areas. There are flights. We wanted to let the drone know where people were. So that was our first prototype, where we started looking at population density, real-time population density, and modeling flights that would go around it. So you could say, okay, I'm trying to fly here in Shoreditch from, I don't know, Brick Lane to, any other name in Shoreditch, to Clerkenwell. And the platform itself would help you understand what was the route that would minimize the impacts or would minimize the risk of hitting a person that could be in the ground, right? Obviously, that was just the starting, and nowadays we aggregate loads of data that Ed will introduce you to help drones understand what's around them even before they are there, and augment their sensors so they can be safer. So you intro the product.
Sorry for all the mic swaps. It wasn't planned.
Okay,
so what have we built?
What we did
is we basically tried to understand, okay, what is the data that we need to collect that impacts the risk of your flight? So let's say you're undertaking a flight in a congested urban space. You're flying near buildings. So you need to know where are buildings, how tall are they, what kind of service areas are we talking about, where exactly are they located. We're flying over people. So we need to understand where people are. We need to understand if we're flying at 4 in the morning over Oxford Street and it's completely empty, or if we're flying at 9 in the morning over a busy train station, there are hundreds of people filling out on their way to work. We need to understand what traffic conditions are doing. Very basic, exactly the same reason. If we're flying over a road which has a lot of congestion, hundreds of cars going 50 miles per hour, there's a massive potential impact of something going wrong if your drone was to fall out of the sky and land on someone's windscreen, land in front of someone's car. The damage is greater than just the damage done to the car. A car can swerve off the road, hit someone, etc. What happens if there are unpredictable weather conditions, if you're flying in strong winds? Another impact of risk, another factor to be considered when considering risk. And since we're in the business of risk analysis, we basically spoke to as many drone operators as we could get our hands on, which has ended up being quite a lot. And we spoke to some of the world-leading experts in this area to basically pick their brains and say, guys, tell us what risks you're facing. And so we built a big data analysis tool, which we put in the hands of operators. And the way it works is this: we partner with lots of third-party organizations, and we get as much data as we can, which tell us where are these buildings, where are people, where are vehicles, what's going on with the weather. And we aggregate this data and we process it in real time. So if you're an operator and you're flying a drone, you can say to our system, okay, I know where I want to fly, I know when I want to fly, tell me what my risk is, let me visualize my risk, and let me reduce my risk. Hopefully our screenshots can do at least some way to explain what we're doing. So it's vague, but let me take you through it. We're basically looking at a real-time map of London, which is showing to some extent population density in the city. The heavy red areas are obviously where large number of people walking around outside and would be exposed to drone risk. The light areas are where there are fewer people. This is taken at 11 in the morning in central London. I, as a drone operator, using the Anton's DJI here, the risks of the drone itself are factored in here as well. If your drone is particularly heavy, if your drone has lots of redundancies built in, such as excess rotors, that's all factored into our risk calculation as well. As a drone operator, I can pinpoint an area that I'm basically going to take off and take some photos in. So I put my marker down at that point there, and I've drawn a circular geofence. So I'm basically telling Flock, our analytics system, I'm flying here, and I'm not going to leave this. We give you a little bit of leeway on top of that, because we know that as a pilot, you might be slightly inaccurate with your flying. We know that wind and other factors might influence your flying as well. And we know that autonomous systems will need this leeway as well. We're very much looking towards autonomous systems going forward. Here what we've done is we've basically aggregated traffic data, building data, population data, and weather data, and we've said, here is your risk metric for that flight. So this flight has a risk of 540. It's our own internal metric. It's something that we're developing ourselves. There's no universal standard for this. We are basically writing the rulebook on risk analysis for drones, so we've decided to name it however we want to name it and display it however we want to display it. By moving your flight from a high-risk area to a low-risk area, you can minimize your risk. So what this is doing is it's putting in the hands of drone operators the ability to visualize risk in a way that they might not have been able to before. Whereas before, drone operators might have had to go to a location, scout it out, take notes on whether it's busy or whether it's empty, try to guess what traffic and weather conditions might be like on the day of flight, or how many people there might be on the day of flight. Now they can just click on our system and we'll tell them what the conditions will be. We're working on accuracy. We're pretty accurate at the moment. We're working with some of the best data providers, and we're getting a lot of data for free, and we're happy to talk about the open data nature of it in the Q&A. Here's
all the data mapped onto one risk criteria.
So not quite. We have a whole array of risk verticals, we call them. We can adjust them. We can adjust them as and when we please. So, for example, we place slightly higher risk on some factors than others, right down to density of cars and how closely packed cars are, the speed that cars are traveling, all the way through to the density of population in certain squares. Some areas are just naturally higher than others. Business districts might be higher than offices, for example, because more people might be outside in certain places.
Are you talking about the output?
I'm talking about on the map as a user, can I have a look at the various different...
Oh, as an output. Oh, as an output. So currently, no, we don't output the specifics of how the risk was generated. Not yet. This is another example of how this might look. This is slightly more complex than just inside a geofence. This is a path with waypoints. The same principle apply. We basically understand what data we can gather, which tells us what's around or inside your flight path, how your flight might impact the area below it, and then we output a risk metric. This is a particularly low risk for this flight because, as you can see, the user has basically decided to avoid high-risk areas by drawing that deliberately. So our first output of this is this kind of visualization that aids operators in their ability to basically minimize their risk and understand their risk. Our next output of this, the next product that we're kind of working on in parallel, which is something we're super excited about, is taking this a step further, saying, right, instead of just allowing the operator to visualize their risk and move things around and minimize their risk and plan their flight, we're actually going to do this for you. So this is why we're an AI company and not just a visualization company. We've got some great minds working on some cool software, which basically allows us to, in real time, understand where risk is in the city and start to path optimize. So this is just a basic path optimization on risk in a city again. This is a compilation of risk. So like you said, it's not displayed as individual verticals. It's just displayed as one composite risk in red and green. And we're basically routing the drone in real time in a way that allows us to avoid this risk as and when it appears. So the application for this might be, for example, working with a company like Amazon or whoever else who might be flying from A to B. Firefighters, exactly. We'll have fires built in there as well. And we'll be able to route them in real time in a way that might reduce their risk by, say, 95% in the long run, helping them to avoid busy public parks, helping them to stop dropping their packages on people's heads, and so on. So I'll pass over to Anton once again.
So where are we at now, and what are our main challenges? Obviously, one of our biggest challenges is understanding what's going around and getting that data, right? 95% of the data is not really available, or it's not even open and open in a way that you can pay for it. So we need to go and hunt the data. We need to talk to every single data provider separately and try to ask for permission, try to ask for a different pricing model, because we can't pay as much as what TfL pays for a bit of data around London. So data is not accessible, and when it is accessible, it's not, let's call it startup friendly, right? So we've got a good idea that could really help the industry take off and be safer and create loads of applications, but we can't really access what's our input somehow, what's our fuel, right? So one of the things, our main job nowadays is really knocking doors and saying, okay, could you give us data that tells us where buildings are? Or could you, organization X, give us data that tells us where people is, etc., etc., etc. We're getting there, and we hope we are defining a bit of a path for these monstrous organizations on the way they offer data to startups. So hopefully soon we'll have a huge array of data sets that feed into this thing. At the moment, are 4 data sets that we're very, very, very proud of having access to, or getting access to, and we will increase.
So which are they? So you started with some open data, like stuff you could just like do proof of concept with.
Exactly, but that was very, very limited. So obviously it's great to say you're using TfL's checking data, but it's just an illustration.
I got you.
At the moment, we've got 4 data sources, which are population density, that's coming from mobile phones. So we've got a pretty good understanding of where mobile phones are in the city. We've got traffic. So we have a very, very good understanding of how that comes from a mapping company. Obviously, we've got some competition looking at us, and we're slightly cautious about not getting names back.
More generally, but you had to go and do a negotiation with them. That's
exactly. The third one is buildings. So we know where pretty much every single structure in the whole UK is, down to trees and bushes. So quite impressive to be able to get the data. And the fourth one is hyper-local weather. So we can know what the wind speeds are down to radiuses of 300 meters.
And who gets that? Does that come later from the Met Office or some, another provider?
Our global providers, our private providers that mine loads of data sources. So they've done a similar job to the one we're doing now, but in their industry, and then they offer the insights in a way we can consume them. So we're here playing a similar game, right? They've got a lot of data sources on the outside. Exactly. We're again taking part of the tree and
given what you described, you probably have also another problem. Part of the data you use is closed. So you yourself cannot release your own data.
That's clear. The current business model of the world will never make your own. That's fine. So that's no joke.
Just quickly on that. Definitely right to some extent. What we see as a one goal of our first product that we showed you is having that open to free drone operators to use.
But it won't be open in the sense of the open definition of open data. It won't be free. Openness as we define it clearly. Yes. Freedom to use, reuse,
absolutely. It won't be necessarily machine readable or downloadable.
So it won't be open.
It won't be fully open, correct?
It won't be open.
Let's say that.
It's not open. Yes.
You can say it for me. So just to kind of very quickly summarise, we're in the field of aggregating big data sources, trying to generate useful outputs that can help people basically fly drones in a way that's safe and socially responsible. We think we've got a very good product. We're working with global companies in a ton of industries. We're navigating an insanely complex multi-stakeholder environment where we're talking with international governments, international data providers, drone operators, right down from individuals to companies with hundreds of people working on world-class research. And we love having conversations like this and just seeking advice from very intelligent people in the same space. So we are here to ask you questions probably as much as you're here to ask us questions. We are also growing our team very, very quickly. And so anyone who's interested in that, obviously ask us. Thank you.
But also so, does anyone have any questions? I'm not sure this is going to reach. That's fine. That's fine. You got a question?
Yeah.
Great. Just to be great to say your name.
I have a good question about heat maps and whether, if you want to see the risk, because sometimes the colour seems to be a little with the numbers. How do you do that? How much visibility is there? Can I cover my cursor and see the actual numbers of the map?
So no one is true that the visualization is not amazing at the moment. We're focusing on non-UI applications. So we're working with big organizations that really need the number. So we output the number straight away, and they mine it afterwards. This is a way to demonstrate how it works and to help you understand how the algorithm works. But yeah, points taken. We'll work
it's something we've been asked. It's something we've been asked before, because a lot of people are actually come to us and say, this is really cool what you're building, and we love the whole drone thing, but like I basically just want to see the data. Just give me the data. So it's something that would definitely go about quite extensively.
Right.
Are you a graphic designer? You get
No,
nice.
I'm Franco. I'm a data practitioner here in London. Intuitively, the data you're producing, I would call it infrastructure. So it's something that everybody should have, and possibly the government should pay for, possibly linking to the model that Rufus was explained at the beginning of the session. Have you thought about this kind of business model for yourselves, or perhaps it's a bit too wide as an idea?
As I said, this whole concept came out from academia, and the first thing we did was to go to the regulators and say, guys, you've got a big problem. You've got no clue how to regulate this industry, as we've well heard. And we've got a possible solution. So we, instead of saying don't fly here, fly there, which don't fly here means don't fly in the whole of London nowadays, let's try something that says don't fly in the areas where it could be too risky, right? Their reaction is, sounds amazing, have to pull you on wherever we can, but at the moment we're not able to buy something like that. At the moment, we're not able to fund something like that straight away because this is coming from the industry. So we're trying to do as much as we can with the industry. Obviously, there's some government funding that we've been using to fund this thing, but it's not coming directly from regulators that should be enabling this technology.
Maybe just I guess to take people back, we're obviously I'm mentioning you guys, if you're hiring a VC funded or something like that, I don't know if that's so, which is great. Like, just to be really clear tonight, because sometimes people get it like, there's nothing like it's not a way for me to build a business like you guys do it on an open data basis. I mean, generally like all the open business models, like you make fries and you make ketchup, trying to make enough money to make both fries and ketchup. It's kind of a tough model, right? It just doesn't really work. Like it's people. You're never going to have an open world based on business model of trying to kind of make a bit of money on the side for a SaaS operation. I think the question we asked is design, maybe to reflect rather than answer. what I think at the moment is you guys may make, I really hope you do, and you may, and that part of the startup should do so risky, it may work or it may not. But how hard it is to do these data-driven businesses. Like you're probably spending some vast percentage of your time at the moment trying to just get access to data and license it and work out the deals and et cetera, et cetera. And I just I guess the question I'm asking that we kind of come back to is kind of like, can you imagine an open world? And at the moment it's just so not the place we're in. That's not a world. There is no fund. You guys can build this up and go, we built it and we're opening it up. But we get paid every time, for example, let's say Amazon, every time they use your data, you get, a penny. Like in the same way that Taylor Swift gets paid, some percentage of a cent every time a song gets played on Spotify. That's not the world we're in. We're in this world at the moment. We have to go and bargain. Normally with very big people, and you guys, and half your money will be spent trying to get data access. So I think that's the question. I do really want to emphasize it's never it's just not feasible right now to do an open data business model for you guys. The question is, what would it take for it to be a world that was?
Okay, so I think Anton's probably going to have a good answer to this, but before he launches in with his good answer, which I'm now setting you up for failure, I want to come back with a question, which is something that I was thinking of when you were giving your talk. Loved the talk. I thought it was super, super interesting and something that absolutely people should be thinking about more. And my question relates to the question you just asked, which is yes and no in terms of the difficulty of collecting data and purchasing data which isn't truly open. Yes, it would be easy to run a business like this if we could access data freely and it was much more easily available, and then we could do the hard bit, which is actually running the risk analysis on the data that we collect, which is what we're specialists in. We're not specialists in collecting data. So that would be lovely. But a question to you on the wider open data ideology almost, it kind of is sounding like an ideology, is we are working with multinational companies which have hundreds of millions of dollars to spend building and innovating around the data that they collect, innovating in a way that allows them to collect more data, more detailed data, and store it in a way that is accessible to those who can pay for it. So my question is, do you think those innovations would have occurred in a world where it was harder for those companies to profit from that data? And using the model that you explained of the open data model, whereby government is this kind of sits at the top of this pyramid and can allocate resources as and when, is there potentially a problem with efficiency in a situation where governments are given an enormous amount of power to be the gatekeepers of access to capital and access to funds?
So it's always the problem of so I'm just going to answer that very quickly because it's kind of crucial, and I don't have enough time at the beginning of this because I just want to introduce people. So the crucial thing about the open world I think is really interesting as well, right? If you're into economics, is kind of a world beyond capitalism or socialism in a weird way. So basically, information is this public good, or this kind of non-right could share it, but it has to be funded. Normally, what we associate that with is government control of who gets that money, right? Like government raise the money, so you have some bureaucrat. Doing damage to this. Controlling who has that money, right? Like government decides where to allocate funds, like at universities in a certain way. And I don't think you need to do that at all. So go back to Spotify. You have a kind of market-based, demand-driven model for how much artists get paid. Spotify doesn't decide how much Taylor Swift gets paid, other than negotiating the kind of per play rate, which you can imagine as being uniform, right? Potentially. What determines how much Taylor Swift gets paid is how much people decide to listen to her music. So in this model of innovation, government have to play a role of kind of collecting the pot of money, but they don't play any role necessarily giving it out. They don't have any determining role. The money goes out to people who innovate and create new products that lots of people use. So it's kind of exactly like the market right now, just without the monopoly inefficiencies, which are massive, of determining which innovations. I mean, if we're really honest, right, about the information age right now, most, if we notice even in most tech or AI startups, their exit point is to Google or Amazon or one of the big players. They don't make it anymore, right? You're entering an industry where your success is probably not going to be an IPO.
because it's so dominated by a few entrenched players right now. Now, every so often in that world, the king is overthrown. Every so often, someone overthrows Google or Microsoft every 20 years. And then there's like Facebook might do it to Google or something, right? But it's completely dominated in that way. And that's just really inefficient. I mean, the story of this, if you want, you go back to, it's like AT&T, famously AT&T, which dominates obviously telecommunications and innovation in that area in the US for 50 years, just sat on large numbers of innovations. Like they invented the answering machine in like 1929 or 1922, and they just didn't release it because they thought it would be bad for AT&T revenue because people wouldn't make as many phone calls anymore because they'd leave, voice messages or whatever. So they just sat on this technology for a whole bunch of time. And that's what goes on now. So my point, just to be really clear, is it's not the government puts money in a pot and decides what to do with it. They put it in this pot and then it's distributed by the market or by innovators. So if loads of people are using your data, you get paid irrespective of who the government thinks to fund. And VC funds still fund you because what they fund you for is rather than patents, they fund you for your remuneration rights. You control these technologies, which you're going to get paid. The easiest way to think about it is for a drug. You come up with an amazing new drug. It's still your invention, and you're going to get paid when people take it. I can't simply say, "Oh, it's my drug." It's just you don't get to set a monopoly price for it. You just get paid for use. So that is the difference. You still have market-based capitalist aspects of like funding itself.
Okay.
Does that clarify?
Yeah, no, that's a really pretty comprehensive answer.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I definitely would discuss it with you over a pint, though.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I feel like there's a lot more to be.
I got you. I've written a whole book just now. It's not that yet released. I can give you a copy if you want. I should go to questions for the author and speakers then. Great. I don't know if this is going to reach. Yeah. I can shout. No, let's pass on that. This is great. Joe, our tech meister, has said something.
Hi, my name's Josh. Awesome presentations. I think there's an industry that I haven't heard you mention but screaming out for it. It's the insurance industry. And I think to both sides that you guys have done real-time insurance with deliveries. You go Royal Mail, do you want to deliver your, do you want to insure your package up to a certain amount. And the same within, I've forgotten the name of the company, sorry, but I don't know if they do insure against virus. Instantly, the ability to cut things down. Are you guys talking to
You should come in and be our strategist because we've just officially branded ourselves an insurtech company.
Yeah.
We've started working with some of the biggest insurance companies in the world because they don't have access to this data or this analytics, and we do it for them. Yeah. So it's a perfect point.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It just makes so much sense.
We should probably also get there. Do you work in insurance?
And to answer my part, in my case, we've been working only with the European Space Agency, but the Spanish Ministry of Environment has also given us a letter of support there, so they're really interested in this to get working because they see the benefits of it and how much expenditure can be reduced for the government, not only in Spain but worldwide. I mean, it's quite amazing how much money just in the United States they spend. We said here 300 million over the last 20 years a year in Spain, but in the States it's like $1 billion a year that they're spending with fires that you see on television probably the whole time. I mean, it's amazing, and all lives and property that is lost there, it's just ridiculous.
Thank you. Brilliant. Anyone else? This gentleman just here and this gentleman behind.
Ben?
Yeah. Can we actually we'll take two questions? I'll go.
Hi, my name is Edward. I was wondering, do you guys have, I guess, path optimization, trajectory planning, these kinds of tools? There's a lot of people looking at this kind of thing, and I'm wondering, for example, NASA had the UTM system. You're nodding, so I'm assuming you're familiar with it. And I'm wondering, CAA are trying to implement something similar, and there's a lot of coordination between the two. Are you guys trying to feed into that as well, or?
Let's take two questions. This gentleman just first that's one question we'll stick with, which is connection.
Hi, my name is Kasey. I used to actually work for an insurance firm.
Yes.
Modeling.
You used to. Oh,
yeah.
That's a problem.
So in catastrophe modeling, natural disasters, violence. So I was wondering, apart from working for an insurance firm, do you work for modeling firms as well? Because there's a lot of work being done, especially for flood modeling, where they need a lot of topology data, and there's no data out there. Even like population density as well. Have you worked with any of the big modeling firms like RMS, AIR, or people like that?
You take the first one because I know you love the second one. So what are we trying to compete with NASA's UTM, NATS, UTM concepts, etc.? No. There are companies trying to play the game, and there's a UK one that's doing an amazing job of trying to propose a solution for traffic management. We believe that there are enough players in that industry for us to try to take a significant stake of it or deliver enough benefits to it. We believe that we can very nicely integrate them and help them understand what's the deal at ground level. So these guys look at this guy and say, okay, let's make sure different drones don't crash, or let's make sure the flight paths are correctly coordinated. We believe that our task or role in that is helping them understand what's happening at ground level and help them plan according to that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and just a super quick one on the modeling question. So really good question. The answer is basically there are tons of stakeholders on top of just modeling who are interested in the data that we have, and they all want different parts of it. Some of them are in catastrophe modeling. We haven't spoken to any catastrophe modelers, but others are in think tanks who are interested in understanding how populations move through cities and why, and where populations aggregate, especially in very congested urban environments, who are really interested in what we're doing. And we're very open to conversations with all of these parties. We learn from them more than they learn from us, probably. So we're very keen to talk to these guys. And we're talking to a few in Oxford and Cambridge. One benefit coming from academia is that you're exposed to really, really interesting insights into all of these areas. So often we'll present data to people who will then say, oh, that's really interesting. I think I know why that's happening. And then we'll get a better understanding of our data as a result of having shared it. Although, actually, I just have one question which maybe we should discuss after, which is...
Stop asking them
questions. Just the last one, which is I'd love to talk to you about the market situation in catastrophe modeling. Because I was speaking to someone the other day who said something really, really interesting about a few companies holding monopoly power in catastrophe modeling.
Basically, the two dominant.
Right.
They're all 90% of the insurance industry.
Right.
There is a big open source effort underway. I understood in the modeling phase going on.
Yeah, it's coming called. Yeah, trying to remember.
There is a big move to open up risk modeling in high-end,
Oasis.
Oasis reinsurance market. But we should go back to questions because we're going to wrap up in a moment. So we can fit time for drinks and things. I've got a couple of questions. Anyone got a couple of questions? Because I know it's on online. It's the last presentation. Any questions on the earlier couple of presentations? I mean, I've got a question maybe for all of you. We can start at this end, which is I'll just with this. What do you see change the market? I mean, like, why do you really see this expanding in what you've seen in the last couple of years? And what do you see as going on going forward? You know, from your guys' perspective of the evolution of what's happening. And I also asked that about the nitrifier. So why is it taking? You said you've worked on this for 9 years. Has it been the regulation that's been in the way? Has it been the technology? What is it that's changing? And what's in the kind of way? You know, and how could the industry go? You know, could it end up like very dominated by a few players, or it could be very open? I mean, open here in the broad sense of competitive and open to new innovation. That's what I'd like to ask. Go from using this. Okay. So 3 questions. What's developments? What do you think is happening, and how could it go in the future?
In terms of development, like with the actual tech itself, the big push is the openness of the hardware. So before there was a few key players that actually owned all the chips and all the algorithms. And what's happened now is that those algorithms and chips are openly available for most people to print and manufacture or change. So there's been a huge push in innovation from everyone really that can afford to send chip designs to China to print. I think the big push is more innovation coming from smaller companies. And there are going to be the big companies that create drones that have very finite features, but now it's become so open that anyone can innovate and create their own products much faster.
What do you think? How could it go? I mean, how could it go? See the future going in the drone industry? What's the big market or risks?
The risk is legislation. Technologically, I have no idea what's going to happen in 2 years. Like, it moves so fast that you can't foresee what's going to happen in 2.5 years. I mean, it changes every month. Like, it moves so quickly from lots of different kinds of players, from the professionals, down to like that guy in his basement who creates a chip design, send it to China. and then start producing 100,000 copies, and it's the best software available. So like, yeah, it's really hard to know really what's going to happen.
Alexander, I was going to ask, you were going to say, what is it that's been in the way for you?
Well, yeah, we were talking about the regulations, but the regulations already opened up quite a bit because you had your free category where you could do basically what you want. There's thousands of companies in Spain, at least. There are lots of companies, lots of friends. I have many companies not only like building drones like you, but offering the services that are similar to ones you were doing. It's opened up a lot. In the case of nitrofibers, we're talking about big machines. We're talking about 5 meter long, 15 feet long machine that's going to be dropped, many of them at once over a segregated area. So that's also very easy to do with the specific category we talked about. It's also a kind of a use that's very different. We're presenting our project in Sacramento, in Marseille, in many places around the world where firefighting takes place and drones are, especially when you go into the drones, it's all defense. So you have to be doing that, and all the models that they have everywhere are beautiful gray models with all their cameras and stuff like that, and then they come and see us and say, yellow and red one, and they're like, what's this? We're opening that market too, because the big drone market was traditionally